And done. Scene. Welcome to Fridays on the Fly. This is episode 9. I'm Eric.
And I'm Ward. We are two creative people that do all kinds of creative things. Personal projects, community projects, writing, short films, you name it, we probably do it. Alright, so one thing I wanted to talk about before we get to our main thing, which we talked a couple episodes ago about how I'm not very confident in my writing and I have a hard time putting it out there. The only way to overcome a fear is to face the fears. I recorded 2 stories I wrote and we're going to listen to them. So it's kind of hard for me to put that out there. You just have to do that, and if it's bad, it's bad, and that's the way it is. But before we get into that, I came across this thing where this guy had written a movie script in 2001. He is just now getting it made.
Wow.
And I'm like, the amount of dedication into that is amazing.
Well, do you think it was dedication, or do you think he wrote it in 2001, really pushed for it hard in 2001, sent it to all these different places, it didn't get picked up, and he just let it go, and then finally someone read it again and said, this might be pretty good, and then picked up the phone and called him? Or do you think he's campaigned for the past 14 years to have this movie made?
I actually can answer that.
Oh, okay.
I listened to an interview. He wrote it in 2001, and there were some things he just couldn't figure out about it, so he put it in a drawer and moved on. And if I got this right, I think he kind of worked as, not a production assistant, but a gaffer and rigger and all this stuff in the industry. And he wrote something else a few years later, and somebody wanted to check it out, and he said that they really liked it, but a movie just like it was on the horizon of coming out. And they asked him, well, do you have anything else? I like your writing, but we can't do this, the same thing's coming out. And he said, well, I've got this old script from way back when. They read it, they liked it, and that's how he got into making it. And he said it still took a couple years past that to kind of nail the script down and get into it all. But that's impressive. And to piggyback on that, I actually came across something else where this guy created a symphony, and it took him 35 years to get it made. But the amazing thing is how he got to that point. It starts with a bit of tragedy. His son dies. I think his son was really young. And that night he has this dream. And the guy said he wasn't religious, but he felt like it must be some kind of angel. They played this song for him, and they told him that the one gift you're going to have out of this is that you're going to remember this song. The guy's not a musician, but he has this song in his head, and he just can't get it out. And he says he knows it's a symphony, and he knows it's his mission to write it. And he tells his wife, he said, he lived in the UK, he said, honey, in a year I'm moving to London, and I hope you come with me, but I've got to go to London to get this song written. She didn't come with him. He moves to London. He's living in a hostel. He gets from a pawn shop a tape recorder and a guitar. Doesn't know how to play guitar, teaches himself how to play, is trying to play the notes of his symphony. Somehow comes across a jazz musician who hears his story and says, I don't know why, but I feel like I need to help you. Brings the guy home. Of course, the jazz musician's wife is like, you brought a bum into our house, what are you thinking? They work together for a year, and they get it written. And the jazz musician says, this is really good. The guy says, well, what do I need to do to get a symphony to play it? The guy's like, well, you really need £1 million because they need to redo it and do all this stuff. That's what you need. And the guy said, if that's what it takes, that's what it takes. So the guy starts working, and he actually somehow transitions into being this real estate mogul, living very efficiently, gets the £1 million, 10 years later comes back to the jazz musician, and he says, okay, I'm ready. And the guy's like, ready for what? You said I need £1 million. I've got £1 million.
You need $2 million now.
Oh, no. The guy's like, well, okay, great, you can do it. And he's like, who do you want to play it? And I can't remember the symphony's name. It's one of these really famous symphonies. He's like, well, they only play for well-known composers or famous people. And the guy's like, well, that's who needs to play it. So he gets it done. He sends the demo tape to whoever needs to review it. And they actually interviewed the guy that's supposed to review it. And he said, yeah, well, I got the guy's tape, and I knew that he wasn't famous. I knew we'd never play it. So I set to the side because I dreaded having to tell him, well, I'm sorry we can't play it. A month later, I listened to it. I called the guy at 2 a.m. in the morning. It was so good. He's like, I was crying after listening to it. And the guy got his symphony made. But that's crazy dedication.
That's crazy.
And I wish I had just a little bit of that dedication because I have so many projects that...
That borderlines on over-dedication.
Sure.
I don't know that I would want that kind of dedication.
I couldn't give up my family to...
No. That's what I mean. I don't know that I can give up everything for that kind of dedication. But I've never lost a child. And I can't imagine what that would do to you.
But still, even a little bit of that dedication is impressive.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt.
So I say all that to say this. You and I... a number of years ago, started some movie scripts. And it is my dream to make a feature-length movie. And I don't mean to go to Hollywood and get it made. I mean us in the backyard, just getting a feature-length film. We've got the script, need some fine-tuning, but... So before we do that one, though...
Need some fine-tuning.
We talked about the Django Unchained parody. And I know last time we talked about it, you said something that kind of struck me about a character I'd written, and it was kind of offensive in a way.
A character you'd written that I found offensive?
Some of the jokes involving the midget that's in this parody.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I thought about that because I feel like in the twist, I'm usually the one that's not quite politically correct. I was like, man, if Eric's calling me out, and I thought about it, and I was like, you know what, he's spot on. I thought a way to change the joke, keep the joke, but just kind of change the focus. I'm like, you know what, this is much better, much funnier. So I want to revisit that screenplay and kind of fix this issue with it. Because I want to make this short one before we get into the feature-length one. I want to do that. We need to work towards doing that. Man. I'm not saying we have to leave our families and move to London.
Thank goodness, because, there's no midgets in London.
Yeah, I want to start working towards that because it's my dream to get feature-length. And I want to do this parody that's going to be playing a half-hour short film.
Yeah, or less. I mean, yeah.
But... I want to do that, cut our teeth, and then do a feature length.
Wow, I didn't know you were that gung-ho about it.
Well, after hearing this guy, because we were into those scripts, and we spent a lot of time with that stuff, and then it kind of just fell by the wayside.
It's hard to do. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. For one, I mean, finding a little person is, even though I still have that guy's number, I have not talked to him in over a year, probably.
It's probably been over a year.
Yeah. So I mean, how do I start a conversation? And I have no problem talking to people, but hey, remember when I stopped you in Walmart and talked to you about making the Django movie with you because you're really small? We want to do that now. Yeah, and I have no problem doing that. I didn't think we were going to do that. I can't even remember what I said that you said that was offensive.
But I think we're kind of the same way, that we get really excited about a new project, and if enough time elapses, it just kind of falls off.
Because honestly, because I've thought of 20 other things.
Yeah.
It's not because I don't really still believe that that's a good project. It's just because my mind has moved on, and sometimes some things are just easier to do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this is not easy at all.
No, this is not easy at all.
I think that's what makes it awesome.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think it actually could be really funny.
I think this is one of those things that even if we do a terrible job, I think people are going to love it because it's terrible.
Definitely.
I mean, there's some things that just go so far beyond crazy that whether it's good or bad at that point, it doesn't even matter. All that to kind of delve into my short stories. We're going to listen to some of my short stories today, and I still have reservations. If I had to record any of them, throw them out there, these would be it. And every time I think, well, I don't know if I want to do this. I started doing these writing challenges, even put my stuff out there the very first time. I was hesitant, and somebody said, hey, that wasn't too bad. And that was enough for me to keep going, because...
Were you hesitant when we were writing, like, the scripts that we've written, or the Christmas thing, to show it to me and be like, oh, maybe he's not going to like this, maybe, were you ever scared about it?
Well, I'd say that's a little different. I want to back up a little bit, because I think the first thing we really collaborated on was the feature-length script we wrote, because we wrote that before the Django parody.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I actually remember that, because I think I was working on a short... I had this idea for a short story. I just knew I wanted to be some kind of road trip, college-age kids.
Oh, that's right.
And you had told me something about how you really wanted to write something. You didn't know what to write, and you wanted to work with me. I said, hey, I got this idea, and I gave it to you. And then you came back with, well, I think this could be a movie.
Yeah.
And then that's when we delved into that. And I remember that first time we sat down, and I didn't really know where you were going, and I had some ideas, and I just remember that collaboration, and kind of, we both worked together, and I was like, you know what, we're really making something amazing on paper here.
I think it could actually still be a really good movie. And the more I watch these other kind of movies, like, especially like the way back, it kind of has that same kind of feel to it.
I'd say that, is it the Wallflowers, or the person being a wallflower?
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah.
That movie... Right. So I feel like we were kind of ahead of the game. We kind of had that idea before these things came out, but now they're all coming out. Like,
Boyhood's out, and but it kind of had that same feel to it in my mind.
Oh yeah.
But I still like the original ending best. Which, if you ever get to see it or hear it, you'll understand what I mean.
I think original though there's an argument there, because there were a lot of endings floating around there, and a lot of ideas floating around. So without further ado, are you ready to hear a story?
Yeah, let's go. Let's hear it.
Approaching the color of dead flesh, a churning mass of dark hues formed the sky above me. A thunderous beat echoed across the glen, the earth quaking under our very feet. Boots stomped the damp earth into a grisly pace as thousands of spears and swords beat upon metal shields. This beat did nothing to quell the sky, but it did calm the churning in my gut. I roared with my allies as the impact of my sword sent a reverberation up my arm, the rings of my mail singing their own tune. By simply raising his arm, our captain quieted the army. His horse snorted as silence hit the front ranks like an unstoppable wave. He had met with our foes, and they had decided on an end to this bitter battle. I had joined this war wearing an unscathed helm. No longer did the paint gleam. It peeled at the blemishes and pockmarks, reminders yet that I was alive. I had spilled blood, and trampled over bodies as we took the offensive. But battle is a fickle beast. Calling for a lone warrior, a single brave soul to end the battle, our captain relayed the coming of the end. Heads turned back and forth. Murmurs and whispers exploded like a chained reaction through the men. I pondered, could this be an idea sprang from the mind of our antagonists? A word cut through my thoughts. It was a single, soft syllable, but it took root as voices joined in the flurry of action. I can't recall if the men stepped aside or the captain parted the men as he rode, all by sheer instinct knowing my exact location. My foe for this single combat emerged head and shoulders above the ragged outline of his people as I approached the grassy knoll that would be my arena. A beast of a man approached, steps jarring the very world. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, with legs thick and knotted like tree trunks. His bellow deep and inhuman erupted from behind yellow, rounded teeth. He sunk his sword into the earth, the crossguard higher than the top of my helm. As he removed his helmet and wiped his brow with his broad forearm, drops of sweat pounded the ground harder than hail. My death stood before me. His first attack cracked like thunder, his massive sword cutting into the ground 2 feet deep, splitting the outline of my footprints in two. I felt the charge in the air as the sword came down, or it could have been the collective gasps of the army behind me. Circling the perimeter of the knoll, I loosed my shield, slinging it aside. Today it would do me no good. His massive shoulder twitched. I catapulted myself forward, feeling the quake of another attack. I refused to listen to the cackles and catcalls of the enemy. My eyes were fixed upward at the bulbous shoulders. I avoided and shirked each attack. More than one glancing blow sent me stumbling. The pain a shockwave through my body. And each time I recovered before this monstrosity could loose another strike. His deadly instrument tilled the ground as I grasped at the edges of my life. I began to swing my sword, reaching no higher than his knees. This exchange continued. His sword would spray dirt in all directions, and I would slice chaotically at his knees. Neither of us slowed, he due to strength, and I due to fear. Torches lit as the sun faded from view. His steel blade couldn't find me, and my sliver of metal struggled to make a mark. Silence had overtaken the armies, each man realizing he was a witness to history. I twisted and turned as the massive feet struck the ground, turning to find me with each dodge. Not a blade of grass remained on the knoll, his sword scattering any living thing save for us. As the moon began to fall, blood streamed down his shins and soaked the soil. So great the volume our footfalls caused it to splash. Men raised their arms to keep it from their eyes. We continued our dance, death patiently waiting his turn. His sword never catching me, mine only nicking. The torches burned down, bowing to the sun. Despite this advent, not a bird chirped, no man stirred from his spot. The very streams and mountains held their breath. His attacks had slowed, while mine were but a gentle whisper. His mighty arms raised overhead. The tip of the blade, higher than a great oak, whistled through the air as it came down. I struggled to avoid the mighty blade. Again the arms readied the blade. I charged forward, sinking my blade into his leg well past the pommel. The knee buckled, and the leg separated. Face forward he fell, a landslide of flesh, the army parting to save from being crushed. The ruddy face sprayed dirt with a sickening crack as bones splintered. As the beast fell, cheers rose from one side. Moans befell the other. I collapsed in mud and blood, the aches of my body suddenly unbearable. I had defied fate, cutting the beast off at the knees. It was a battle I had no business winning. But war is a fickle thing.
At first, it was like poetry. Did you feel that same way?
Definitely, yeah.
And as the story went on, it kind of changed more into a story. But at the beginning, it was definitely like some type of like beat type poetry. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah. I mean, definitely as I was writing that, it kind of felt that way. And
especially the way you read it. I like the way you read it, because if I read it, it wouldn't come like that in my head, unless you wrote it out like a poem. But it was definitely very, like, Longfellow-ish. It was very, very poetic. I actually thought it was the story of David halfway through. I was like, he's really describing the story of David. This is David telling his story. Did you feel the same? I mean,
when I wrote it, that was not my intention, and I do an online contest where I submit stories.
Right.
And somebody had that comment of, oh yeah, I thought this was David and Goliath, and I kind of was like, oh, man, that wasn't my intention at all. And I get that on one hand, I think, man, just because there's a giant guy, it has to be Goliath.
And it's a little guy, and the armies are standing aside, and they're watching, essentially what I would assume, a guy battling Goliath each time and losing. That's what it's kind of felt like. Yeah. At first, it kind of felt like they were all going to do battle, but then it turned into this one-on-one thing. So I thought it was the story of David, told by David.
I think that probably the language of the story lends itself to being more David and Goliath.
Definitely,
it definitely has a different style.
It was amazing, though. I really thought the beginning it captured me. I thought really, really poetic.
Yeah, I was really kind of nervous to hear what you thought, and
yeah.
I'm like, man, he's being awfully nice.
As the story got on, I felt like you were using too many adjectives. There were way too many descriptive words there that you could have probably cut out. It would have been sharp, but the beginning was sharp. I'd say the first half of it was very sharp, and then at the end, it didn't hold me as much as the beginning did.
I get that.
The beginning, I felt like I was struggling to like keep up with the poetry of it. Poetry, when people think of poetry, they think it should rhyme. I don't always see it that way, but man, that was the beginning of it. Like I said, was beautiful, but in the end,
I think it got a little muddy.
Yeah, it didn't hold up, and I think it might have just been because it was too adjective filled.
I didn't consider that. I would argue the thing about it right now, the reason the end is not as strong as the beginning, is the beginning, the pacing is moving. The whole first half, we're moving. Yeah. The last half is just the battle, and we don't really, it never becomes more than that. They're just dancing around on the field. I think if I had gotten past that, if they do more, if there's something more there's just not enough there to fill the space I'm putting it into.
Honestly, the first half of it, you're describing a battle, but it was so poetic that I didn't think you were actually talking about a battle. I thought you were actually I thought it was going to be something else, some other type of struggle in your life or something like that, not an actual battle. That's what I felt. I was like, oh, he's not actually talking about a real battle here. We're going to get into something else. It's going to be because in the end, I mean, it's obviously a battle, but at the beginning, I really thought you were talking about something else. Inward battle or something like that.
And I don't know if it's just kind of poetic nature of this, but this is the first story I wrote that I really kind of thought, what if I recorded this? What if I put it out there? Because again, it's easy to put them out there on the internet in a contest because none of those people know me. And it's not like I'm going to see them like, yeah, Ward, terrible story, gosh. I don't see them, so it's easy to throw it out there. But this was a little bit tougher to actually put out there. I've actually performed this one live, which went fair to middling.
Where did you perform it live at?
It was Toastmasters. They had a thing at a mall in the Roanoke Mall.
Oh, yeah.
I'd say the only reason my performance was not that great was because the night before I'm like, hey, I wonder if I should memorize this. Well, it's too much to memorize. So it loses a little bit,
No, I don't think it loses anything. I think if you read it, I think if you read it like you read it there, or is that from the...
No.
Oh, okay.
The reading there probably was not quite as good. This one I recorded at home, so I could kind of... Oh, yeah, I messed that line up. Let me back up.
Yeah, the pentameter at the beginning was really very poetic. I really thought it was a poem at first.
Awesome.
But yeah, it was really good.
But actually, I came up with this. I made this helmet. You've seen it.
Yeah.
I made it out for sale sign. And I was on the way home thinking about this helmet, and I just started crafting this story, and the original story in my head that I was writing was a little more comedic. You have this cocky warrior, and the end, the kind of punchline was, and the phrase cut off at the knees, well, this is how he coined it.
Oh.
And so it's more of a comedic story.
Yeah.
And then, I think it's probably a few days to a week later when I actually sat down, I was like, I need to get this out. So many stories, if I don't get them out, they're lost forever in the ether. So I started writing it, and when I was writing it, I didn't feel comedic, and it kind of had a different twist to it.
Yeah, no, I like that you didn't go comedic with it. But cutting off the knees, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, you have this just really cocky soldier, and with this, I turned him a little more young. And,
I don't see the cockiness.
I just didn't write it that way. When I sat down to write, it just was different. But in the end, he's like, yeah, cut off at the knees. That was me. If you ever say that, think of me in my battle.
But yeah, I'm glad somebody else thought of the David Goliath thing, because halfway through, I really thought it was a personal thing. I didn't think it was an actual battle, but then when it started to get to the actual battle, I was like, oh, okay, it's David and Goliath. From the story of David, from the mouth of David.
Now that someone said it, it's like, I guess it's kind of obvious, but kind of...
It probably didn't even impact your story at all. You probably never even thought about that.
I never thought about it,
You never made the connection of the giant and...
No, because what I was thinking, my whole story started with this helmet, this dented helmet, and how do you get a helmet that looks like this? I was writing, I was well, it's no fun to... even my comedic story had him battling a giant. Right. You have that tension, and I just didn't think about David and Goliath.
And I didn't think of David and Goliath until I think he fell and the soldiers had to move. That's how big he was, because then it got like ridiculous big. I just figured it was a big guy at first.
His sweat falling like hail. That's
right. His sweat falling like hail on the ground. Right. Him plowing up the earth. Yeah. Tilling the soil. I thought the beginning of it was very good.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations.
That's not terrible.
Change the end. Change the end immediately.
But it's funny because that's one of those things that before you said that, I didn't really realize why is the end not as good, and then you talk about it. I'm like. You're right. That's completely valid. And now that you say it, I'm thinking, I realize this is why it's not valid. That's one of those things that...
Did you write that in one sitting? Or did you write it and go back?
All my writing kind of is, I write it, and then I'll go back if I can. I mean, now some of these writing challenges, I used to try and get started early, now it's almost last minute. So I'm like, let me write something as fast as I can just so I can submit something.
Right.
I probably wrote it in one sitting. I may have gone back and just edited to make sure it makes sense. Bulk of the story is one sitting.
When you write it and submit it, do you write it in the fashion like you read it? Do you understand what I mean? When you read a story, it's usually just like in a book, paragraph, indent, another paragraph. But the way you read it read like a poem. Like you were reading one line, and they were all about the same length too, especially at the beginning.
In the beginning, those were separate paragraphs.
Felt like more like stanzas than paragraphs.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if you wrote it like that, or if that's just the way you read it.
Yeah, I did, because I consider each one of those little stanzas a separate thought. I'm not really good at grammar and all these rules, so if I feel it's a separate thought, it's just a new paragraph.
It probably could have been half as long.
I think the whole last half is kind of muddy.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think it could have been half as long. I think if you had taken a couple things at the beginning and changed the end a little, probably could have been half as long and really good.
I think the converse is, if just something more had happened in the end, if there could be something different in the end, but it's just too much of the same thing.
Yeah.
Either shorter or figure out what that trick is to
transition to something else.
Engaging.
Yeah, have a different idea in there somewhere, a different thought.
Well, thank you for your feedback. I appreciate it. I was a little nervous while I was listening to it. I'm thinking, what am I getting myself into? But
if you change it and make any money off of it,
credit you.
I'm going to want 80%.
80%. Hard bargain. I've got another story if you're willing to sit down and listen to another one.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
When the dust settled, what was left? Yellows, blacks, and browns created a one-point perspective centered on a female form. Her knees slightly bent, her white shorts riding high. One arm held a strip of red cloth in the air. The sounds were deafening. 16 total cylinders containing explosions fed by gasoline. The cars revved their engines, a scattering of people cheering and catcalling. The girl let the strip of cloth go. I watched for a lifetime as it floated to the ground, tracing the outline of her arm and leg as it descended. The world held its breath. When it touched the ground, it didn't stir a single grain of dirt. In that instant, a matte black 55 Chevy Bel Air lurched off the imaginary line, engine screaming, the driver's white-knuckled hands gripping the steering wheel. The kinetic energy comprising the light, heat, and sound was matched by the yellow 32 Highboy. White-walled tires kicked up dirt, pelting those behind it. In a single motion, the cars took off and the crowd flowed into the void left by the cars designated to race. Openings in hoods had been cut for protruding scoops to intake more air. Exhausts unbolted at the headers to expel it. Engines were bored and compression increased. How much was enough? Just a little bit more. Just a little faster. The drivers' hearts were thumping, trying to escape their chests. Their feet held the pedal to the floor, right hands gripping a gear shift, interrupted only to reach a higher gear. That moment simultaneously seemed to defy time, yet was altogether too short. A cloud of exhaust and dust left in their wake, perfect tire prints imprinted upon the ground. You could never answer the question, how fast? You never looked at the gauges, only the landscape directly ahead. Danger perceived has a direct relation to age. We were too young back then. Instances of false security paraded as a standard. Despite our ideas and machinations, no one lives forever. Everything fades before it perishes. I'd broken more than one vase as a child, carefree and strong-willed. My mother tried to glue it together, but it was never the same. The closer one approached, the cracks began to manifest. Less force was required to recreate those cracks, the pieces never quite fitting together the way they once did. Simultaneously, that felt like yesterday and a lifetime ago. I'd been provided ample time to relive my youth over the years. The cars existed only in memories. I imagined the girls I chased. Out of my league, though, I was oblivious. I thought of the ones I should have considered. If I'd known then what age had taught me, I may have been a better man. And their beauty increased daily, memories replaced with fantasy. My mind has a wonderful way of painting the protagonists. My days ran one into another. Routine. It felt like something for an old person. I didn't think I was old, though younger me would have called it undeniable. I'd go to the mall, sit and eat. I'd chat with staff and patrons, the old women who walked the circuit for exercise. We were regulars, convening in a shared temple, a shrine to commercialism. I didn't know then that a structure that felt fresh and alive would decay. It had been heralded as a new era, but every era ends. Users and inhabitants would move away, leaving it all but abandoned. I witnessed it. I experienced it. My decay ran in tandem. I would sit at the same table every day, unless, of course, someone got there before me, while rare, yet not out of the question. I'd watch the people. Martha and Anne would walk around the top tier, wave and smile at me when they passed the food court. 8 laps they would walk, focused and resolved. Teenagers moved in all directions, their desires shifting quicker than the shadows created by the skylights. They formed clusters that would rove around the mall. Sometimes I forget I was no longer that age, catch myself staring at a cute girl. My stare would be returned on occasion, always met with disgust. Parents would push their babies in bright new strollers, and a few years later, those same parents would be pulled by the children. Age brings fatigue. Or is it the children? Husbands sat outside department stores checking their watches or taking a nap. Families would meet for Sunday brunch at the buffet. A security officer was hired. It was a revolving door. I'd learn their names just before they'd leave, each telling me the same as they passed. "Keep an eye out for me, would you?" An arcade appeared and children flocked. The noises floated across the mall. The once serene atmosphere sounded like a war zone. The groups of teenagers finally had a destination. I saw first kisses and rejections, fighting and breakups. In only a few years, the arcade was no more. Stores came and went. Toy stores that attracted children like magnets held a sale before they closed the doors. They were no match for a big box store. I watched families grow up. I shared in their life, yet they never knew I was that shadow, lurking. The thought would strike me that I had not seen this one or that. Maybe they moved. Maybe it was worse. I felt a sense of loss for that person I never knew. Maybe it was the loss of the familiar, or a change to my routine. I never had any kids of my own. The shape of my life stunted in my teen years, never to recover. I live in the smiles on lips and tears in eyes. Any insight I thought I gained from watching these faces, I dismissed as folly. I'd see former classmates, the ones that never quite escaped the city. I could see the nostalgia on their faces. Maybe it was pity. I couldn't blame them if they pitied me. I just wished they'd hide it better. I'd guess at what they thought as they made an excuse to leave. Maybe at one time, I did have the world in front of me. An unfortunate accident that I let it slip away, though accident was far too kind of a word. When my favorite burger place left the food court, no one came to fill that space. There were more empty spaces than filled. Few people came to a mall anymore. I pondered that one day soon, I would no longer come to sit. I talked to fewer people still with each passing day. It wouldn't be long before even I would forsake my seat. I reached down and I released the brake, grabbing the wheels and giving them a push. I rolled to the elevator, a child eyeing me and wanting to ask that question. His mother whispered and he looked away. For the longest time, I felt I didn't have a choice. when I traded the magnesium Kragar wheels for the ones on my chair. Fate had dealt me the intended hand. I had been ignorant of the repercussions. But so had we all. I missed that 55. Almost as much as I missed my life. The yellow 32 had begun to skid and slid right into me, pushing me into that tree. I had borne the brunt, but I never cast blame. I freely forgave. I imagined my life and what different choices would have allowed me to gain.
So many thoughts. First, I didn't like it. I didn't like the car part, which is strange because targeted by 55 and a 32 deuce. But I didn't like it. And then you went and started talking. I wasn't sure of the age of the guy at this point. Is that...
No, that was the intention.
That was the intention. I thought he was describing his younger days, and now he was older. Gosh, when you were describing the parts through the mall and the lives that he had watched and all of that was amazing. That was amazing. And I thought, okay, it's this old man who's lived his life, and we got a little glimpse of his past life just to show that he was just like us, you know. He was a kid once. He did crazy, stupid things, and now he's this older guy who we've all seen in the mall. I mean, we've all seen the guy. And just from his perspective, it was really, really good. But then as we got to the end of the story, I thought, well, this guy? He could be 25 for all I know. That's where I actually started thinking, like, really, how old is he? So, I mean, what did you think? Well, how old's the guy?
Or 60s, I'd say 60s or 70s.
Okay, all right, yeah. That's what I had at the beginning. And then towards the end, I thought, geez, he made this mistake a couple years ago, and now this is how he spends his day because he's in a wheelchair and he doesn't have a job or something. My
intent was, talking about the mall and things leaving and coming, families growing up, that kind of lend itself to this guy's been around a long time.
Okay, well, and that's what I thought. But it could have been over 5 years.
I mean, I had a very specific... Everything kind of came together for this story. I mean, I know the prompt for this story was, I think, dust. I started this story with just this image of a piece of dust floating in the wind. I was like, all right, why is a piece of dust floating in the wind? And then this was right after our Lost podcast episode where we talked about American Graffiti, the 55, and
right.
the Deuce, which, of course, no one's ever heard about that because that episode got deleted and we couldn't quite recreate the magic. So then I had these cars in there. Okay, that's why there's dust. And then it went from there. Right. And because this guy is a very specific guy that used to be in the Danville Mall that my mom knew him. He had been a classmate, and he had been in some kind of car wreck or motorcycle wreck. So he sat in the mall in a wheelchair. That's where he sat all day.
Oh.
Then I kind of got into, I saw this guy. Of course, I was really young. What were his days like? And at the same time, I had just seen a website talking about the decline of malls. It would show these pictures of deserted malls that look like right. ghost towns now. Malls are falling down. They're decaying. So I kind of tried to tie it into this guy and his age and life.
Yeah. No, that was really good. Like I said, I didn't like the beginning. I don't know why I didn't like the beginning. I kept thinking, what's that girl look like? what's her figure look like? But I didn't like the beginning. I don't know why, but can't really say why I didn't like the beginning. I don't know. But when you started talking, when the old man started describing his days, it caught me because I think about that too. I think about not the guy in the mall, but people's lives. Mm-hmm. That old person, they were much young and they did the exact same things that we did. And that's where I thought you were really going with it, is that when you got to the wheelchair, I didn't realize it was because he was in an accident. I just figured it was some old man in the mall and you were just relating this story to us just so we can get a little glimpse of his life. And now he feels like he wants to go back to those days of racing and be young again. That's what I thought.
That's one of those things that's always hard. I'm trying to create this twist because I know I'm springing the surprise on the reader.
Right.
And this one part where I think he said something like, "Oh, calling it an accident is too tragic." I'm like, was that going to give it away? And
right.
So I never quite know. And
no, I didn't catch on until you said he unlocks the brake and rolls away, and then I still wasn't sure. Then I was still like, oh, could just be an old dude in a wheelchair. I mean, old people sometimes need wheelchairs. I didn't really get it until you talked about the 32 slamming into the 55 and. hitting a tree. I didn't know that's where you were going with it. I almost didn't want you to go there with it.
Why is that?
Because the description of his daily life was better than all of that. Stepping into someone else's shoes and feeling what they feel, I think is so much better than the two ends of the story that you put on. The beginning, I completely understand. I could see how that could tie into it. He was a young man once. He's old now. He still longs for those young man days. Checking out the girls in the mall, feels a little old, feels a little creepy. It happens to all of us. But I don't think it needed that thing on the end. I think it was intriguing enough to hear just about this man's day and how he spent his years and how he's seen people change and how, he saw his favorite burger place go and nothing replaced it. And that can mean so much more than just a burger place.
But see, I would argue that he never would have slowed down. He never would have seen those things if he wasn't restricted like that. Well,
I thought he was just restricted by age. Mm-hmm. Which, that happens to a lot of people. I mean, I used to work in a mall. I mean, I was young. I'd see those people all the time, and you could tell I felt like they were just waiting to die. Really? I mean, why else would you be there? Why would you get an Orange Julius every day? But, so to hear you describe it like that, I think that was the story. I think it was just, I don't think you need that to add the end on it where he was in an accident. I think that takes away from the rest of it.
Interesting.
Yeah. In my opinion, I thought the middle of it was beautiful. Mm-hmm. The end and the beginning, I could have done with the beginning being a little bit different, just in your wording. I don't know what it was about the wording of the beginning that felt, I didn't love it. But once you got into telling his story about being in the mall, you hooked me there. And then once it got to where he was in the wheelchair, it kind of lost me. I wasn't that interested in it at that. You know how much I love cars. But
I'd say that, this is me guessing, but I'd say the beginning may be weird for you. Just some of the phrases in the way, because it's not really described like a real car thing. It kind of goes to like these really macro level things, like a piece of dust floating, which is
and it might have been too descriptive.
And it's kind of, that started my whole idea for this dust floating. So I really kind of got this kind of viewpoint of not what you typically see in a car race, but very much in the dirt and stuff.
But I did find myself going back to her until you got to the mall. I kept thinking, how high are those shorts? And why white? Is it after Labor Day? But those thoughts did enter my mind as I was listening to it. Whose figure? I could have completely done without the end of the story. I thought it was beautiful up to the end of the story.
I find that intriguing.
I like personal stories like that, though. I like to write personal things about myself and not people not know what they're about. Those kind of personal, intimate details, they appeal to me very much. That was very nice.
So you're saying, right before we had this wheelchair reveal, you would cut it right there?
Yeah, maybe just change it up a little. How his story ends.
I guess my thought is you have these bookends, and that wheelchair part kind of brings in,
I don't think you needed to bring it in. This is less storytelling to me, more poetry to me. More like this very deep, personal, both of those. The beginning of the first story and this one, they're very personal and much deeper than a story.
So a story's supposed to be. A story should be deep and personal.
Yeah, but then you end it with that, and it almost seemed cliche to me. Like, oh, he got a car accident. Oh, okay, got it. What makes those Linklater movies so good to me, they don't have these dramatic pieces to them. They're just stories.
You gotta have my gotcha moment at the end.
I don't think you had to. I think you could have left it out, and I think you could have ended it somewhere in there, or just added one more thing to the end of it before you get to the wheelchair. This is how I spend my days. This is how I'll end my life, or something like that. I mean, I would have... But again, I kind of lean towards the more dramatic, somber, gray areas.
You'd said you weren't really sure how old this guy really was. Whereas I saw decades passing, which, listening to it, that's obvious. It's not very clear that much time is really passing unless you really kind of read.
Well, no, I thought a lot had passed up until you reached the point where he was in a wheelchair. I thought he was old until you said he's in a wheelchair, and I thought, oh, you know what? He could still be young. This could have happened 5 years ago, and this is how he spent his last 5 years in a wheelchair at a mall. Because he ruined his life 5 years ago when he was 18 in a car wreck. Mm-hmm. But before that, I just figured he was an old guy in the mall. And especially, when you talked about he was too old to look at the younger girls. But you could be 30 and too old to be checking out 18-year-olds,
That's interesting. I guess for me, the whole wheelchair thing is what gave him the perspective, gave him the opportunity to see these people growing up.
See, I saw that as more of the age thing. When you're younger, you don't even think about really other people. But when you're older, I mean, now that I'm a parent, I think about what my parents did and how they went through.
Sure.
I never thought of it till probably 5 years after I had a kid. I think as you get older, you look back and you You watch these other, and you think about your life, and you watch these other people's lives, and you become more reflective because, A, you're older and you can't do the things that we can do at our age, so you kind of have to. I thought it was a beautiful story up until the end. I just thought he was telling that beginning thing just as I wasn't always this old dude in a set in a mall. I was young once.
Oh, a specific question. I had a transition from the car racing to a very old memory of being young, breaking the vase, and then I skipped to the mall. How did that part work for you?
I don't remember that part. What did he say?
Strong-willed, mindful child. You break a vase. You can never quite put it back the same way. You look closer, the cracks appear.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought that was very... I wasn't sure if it was actually a broken vase. I remember thinking, or if they were... Metaphor, right. For the things you did wrong in your life. I mean, and not just the one little race that he had, but the whole life.
Definitely a metaphor.
Of course.
But also I was trying to paint it as he's at the end of his life looking back, and this car thing is just this memory, and I did this kind of weird view on it because, memories can get weird. It's been so long that he just sees it weird, and then you have this vase thing that is a metaphor, was also this memory. I don't know, listening to this second time around, I almost feel like a childhood memory needed to kind of pop up somewhere else just to kind of, I don't know, just almost feel like I shoehorned it in. I felt like I needed to somehow either tie it in with another memory, or I don't know.
I don't think that was its biggest problem. I don't.
No.
I think you could have put that in anywhere. I understood it when he said it, when he talked about putting the cracks back together and, putting it back together and seeing the cracks. And I understood what it meant then. Just it's still the ending. I wouldn't go for the ending. But we clearly, we think not way different, but, there's some things we're just apart on.
Yeah.
I saw that as more of poetry than a story.
Interesting.
And a poem is not always a story. And a poem doesn't always have an ending. And stories, again, I related to Linklater. I thought it was very Linklater-ish until you got to an ending. And I was like, oh, all right, he brought us to an ending. I could have lived without the ending.
I think I can see what kind of ending you would have... And you tell me what you think about this. But I guess your ending would be more... He could roll out of the mall and say, well, I guess I'll be back tomorrow. Just something very open-ended. Like very, he talked about the routine. It's just the routine and keeps
Tomorrow's going. The next day.
I wonder what will replace that burger place tomorrow.
Not something as funny as that, but we tend to joke around about everything, but I wouldn't joke around about that. I mean, I thought that was great. I really did. But yeah, I would end it like that, sure.
But now I'm curious about this poetic quality you talk about this. Now I'm like, man, I got to record some more stories. And
yeah, you don't hear that?
I mean, the first one, I definitely get that because I kind of wrote it like that. For this one, I mean, I guess I can say at the beginning it might be poetic just because
I didn't think the beginning was at all. I thought when you started to describe his life.
That was poetic.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't really...
That was very storytelling poetic, yeah. I thought it was very good.
Well, thank you. Well...
Except the end. Him sucked.
That's okay.
It's like Seinfeld.
And we may be hearing some more stories in the future because I've got, I guess a couple years ago, I kind of looked at how many short stories I'd written, and I have enough to make a book.
Wow.
I can't even remember what year it was, but I was like, all right, I'm going to put them all together. I'm going to make this book, and I'm just going to self-publish it. Because, I'm not going to make any money. I mean, I think my friends might be interested. I was like, maybe I could, sell it for $1. Because
yeah, but those are the kind of things that, either your friends are going to buy it, or somebody sees it and it picks up. I mean, you don't know with these things. I mean, you don't know with things like that. It just takes one little thing that's viral. Yeah. I mean, you've heard of the movie Big Fat Greek Wedding? The person that wrote it sure didn't think you were going to hear of it. You've heard of it.
But yeah, my goal was to kind of go through it. Because, I had all this criticism I've gotten. And I was like, I'll put it together. I'll let my wife read it and let people, it's one of those things that I put all the stories together. I kind of did an order of it.
Right.
And I was actually surprised at how many of my stories are about old people. I mean, I don't know. It's
fear of aging, maybe.
Well, there's so many of it. Some of them can, kind of... Yeah, I guess it is a fear. I don't know if personal fear of it aging.
Well, sure. I mean, you watch your description of him and his day was definitely a fear of aging to me.
I guess I could almost more of a defense of old people that, so many people just look, old people are worthless, but old people aren't worthless. There's thoughts there, there's stuff going on.
That's true. I of Dumb and Dumber. Old people, though slow and dangerous behind the wheel, can serve a purpose. He got her to hold the beer while he was at the... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, 'cause I know there's some other story I wrote that maybe I have to record this one. I think as like an older person in a catatonic state and kind of what's going on in their mind. And in essence, I so badly wanted to make a video of it. But I just knew there's difficult to do it justice to create all the sets. But in essence,
memories that go through their mind.
Well, in essence, this person in a catatonic state is just trapped in the brain. They want to get out and they just can't.
Right.
So that's kind of the whole story of he's in these different cages and these different rooms, and every time he wakes up, he's disoriented, and he's trying to get out, and he doesn't understand it. And he can look out and see these things going on, but he can't get to them.
That's fear right there.
Maybe one day I'll get my book together, but I compiled all my stories. But I had about 40 or 50 short stories in there.
I meant to bring you the Shel Silverstein book, too. Gosh, I was thinking about it all week. I was like, don't forget that book. Don't forget that book. Don't forget the book. Because we could easily be the next Shel Silverstein. Especially with that kind of writing. Well, not that, but you're man, that was really good. I don't know which one I liked. I probably like the second one better.
Second one better?
Yeah.
Just because that personal, because you seem to key into that.
Well, yeah, and those are the kind of movies I like. You take me into something personal. Don't dumb it down for me, and don't make a joke about it. Take it somewhere personal, and I'll go with you. I'll follow you there. Now, I like jokes and, that kind of stuff too, but if you take me somewhere personal, I'll follow you there. I lean to those kind of movies. That kind of movie where you tell me a personal story, or humorous movies. Those are the two movies I usually go for. And I guess I do enjoy other kind of books. Yeah, man, you have to record more. Definitely.
I will definitely do that. This has been the Story Minute with Fridays on the Fly.
Story minute?
Story moment.
The story half an hour? You gotta come up with a better name.
Story time.
No.
The Story Blast.
Stories on the fly. I like that.
Stories on the fly.
Yeah.
All right, let's close it out.
Thanks for listening. I'm Eric.
And I'm Ward. We are all over the internet. Our website is fridaysonthefly.blogspot.com. We are on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, Pinterest. Our username on all those sites is Fridays on the Fly, so check us out. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening.